So now we're going to go back and forth between decimals and percents. In the last lesson, we went from fractions to percents. So let's make sure we remember how to make a fraction a percent, right? 1/2. And when you have 1/2, you don't even have to show your work in this class because 1/2 always makes 50%. 7/25. 25 times 4 is 100. 7 times 4 is 28. 7/25 is 28%. 6/12 simplifies to 1/2. So once you get it to 1/2, you know it's 50%. 10/40 simplifies to 1/4. And similarly, if you have memorized that 1/4 is 25%, you're more than welcome to not show work for 25%. Now, 12/12 simplifies to 1/1, right? So what is 1? It's 100 out of 100. What percent is that? It's not 1%. That's 100%, right? A percent is how many of 100. So when you get 1 whole, you get 100%, right? A half is 50. So a whole is twice as much, 100%. So I've done some work here. I've converted decimals into percent. So 0.37 is 37%, 0.06 is 6%, 1.2 is 120%, and 1 equals 100%. So what's the pattern here? Well, I think you can see, you move the decimal twice and put a percent symbol. You move the decimal twice, put a percent symbol. Notice we moved the decimal twice there, and then we had to add a 0 because we made an empty space. And on the last one, you move the decimal twice and you made 2 empty spaces, and so you get 100%. So there's a very nice shortcut for turning decimals into percents. So, right, you move 0.17, move it twice, you add the percent. It is that easy. Now let's just make sure we understand that this is a shortcut. Okay, that this is 17/100ths. It's not that hard. You could write it as 17/100ths and then realize 17 out of 100 is 17%. Right, so we always move it twice. It does not go to the end. That's the number one mistake people make. You always move it twice. If there's an empty space, you fill it with a 0, and that's 60%. So this one, you always move it twice. We're not going to write 0.9%. We're going to write 9%. And then we always move it twice. Fill in empty spaces with 0. Right? If you have more than 1, you have more than 100%. This is 130%. Now, right? We could do it the long way. 6/10 equals how many out of 100? 60 out of 100, and so on. This one here, right? This is 1 3/10, which is 13/10, which is, right, 130 out of 100. That's what happens with mixed numbers. You make them improper fractions. All right, so this is, move it twice, more than 1, we better get more than 100%, 175%. We always move it twice, right? So this is 9.5%. Right? It doesn't go to the end every time. And there's a perfect example. What is that? This is less than 1%. It's a fraction of 1%. It's 0.7%. What does that mean? Yeah, that means it's 0.7 out of 100. Yeah, we can have that. So here, what percent of the time did each team win? Well, let's look at that. So Spurs won 65.9%. The Hornets won 59.8%. And the Grizzlies won 29%. We're not going to put 29.0. We're just going to put 29%. It's that easy. All right, so what percent is 1? Let's first of all, right, the decimal point of every number is at the end. It's there, right? This is not 1. That's 0.1, 1/10. This is 1. So we move it twice. You have 2 zeros to fill in, and it's 100%. Right? 1, right? To make a percent, the long way, is 100 out of 100. It's 100%. So if 1 is 100%, what's 2? Yeah, 2 is 200%. What's 16? 1,600%. Yes, because you have to add the 2. You move the decimal twice from the end every time. All right, so now we're just going to go backwards. All right, to go backwards, you have to move the decimal place back 2 spots to the left and take the percent symbol away. So the decimal is always at the end of every number, if you don't see it, and you move it once, twice. We move it twice, there's an empty space, and that's 0.06, right? Let's just make sure we understand this. These 3 things are all equal. 6% is another way of saying 6 out of 100. 0.06 is another way of saying 6 out of 100. 80% is 0.8, and if you want to put the leading 0 in there, you can go 0.8, but it's 0.8. We take this 0 away. We don't need 0.80. Right? 80% is 80 out of 100. This is 8 out of 10. Right? They are equal. 120% is 1.2. Right? You have more than 100%. You better get more than 1 whole. 12.5% is 1/2 is 0.125. And this is, by the way, 1/8. 1/8 makes 12, right? When we're making eighths, we're going to 1,000. And when you go to 1,000, right, you get 125 thousandths, which turns out to equal 12.5 out of 100. So you see a pattern there. Right, so 1% is 0.01, 20% is 0.2, 300% is the number 3 whole. 2,400% is the number 24. All right, so the Dodgers won 65.1%, the Giants have won 34%, and the Astros have won 56.8%. Change the percents to decimals and list the teams from first to last place. So who won the most? And this is the purpose of percents. It makes comparing which is bigger easy. Hopefully we see 65.1% is the biggest. And so in first place is the Dodgers. And so in the paper, they would list that as 0.651. In second place, we're going to put the Astros. And theirs is 0.568. And third is the Giants. And now we got to move that one, right? We got to move it twice. And then we add a 0. So 0.340. There's the 0. And that makes it all nicely line up. And then one of the reasons they do it this way is because during baseball especially, the teams have not all played the same amount of games. At one time, one team could have played 3 or 4 more games than another team. And you still have to be able to compare who's in first and who's in second and so on. All right, so here's some practice. Let's convert those to percents. And by the way, on the test, make sure you're always reading, because sometimes I want a percent, sometimes I want a decimal, sometimes I want a fraction. Here I want percents. So that's 9%. That is 10%. That's 0.1, 1/10, 10%, 10 out of 100. That's more than 1, so more than 100%, 140%. And that is 3.5%, 3.5 out of 100. As a decimal, we're going back the other way, 0.43. 2%, move it twice, 0.02. 180%, 1.8. 24.5% as a decimal is by the way, that is still a percent. Just because it has a decimal point doesn't make it a decimal. It's a percent, and to make it a decimal is 0.245. What percent of the time did Martinez get a hit? He got a hit 25.3% of the time, right? Now, hopefully we've memorized that 25% is 1/4, so about 1 out of 4 times he gets a hit. Johnson here is almost at, right, is almost at 40%, right? If you made that, that would be 39.8. He's almost at 40%, which is very, very high for baseball. Good luck with the homework.